is going on, everybody? Welcome to Party on Broad. Amazing show for you guys today. The Eagles are sitting at 6-0 at the bye week. What better time to bring in the man, the myth, the legend, the quarterback guru himself, SB Nation. You can find him in many different platforms. It is an honor to have him on yet again. I think for like the fourth or fifth time. You're definitely our most reoccurring guest on this show. What is good, Mark?
I'm doing well, Crocky. It is great to be back. We were just sort of saying, seems like I'm coming on like every quarter or so. So I guess I'll be back. I don't know, maybe December, January, something like that. Love coming on, man. And look, it's the era of unbridled optimism is upon us in Philadelphia. I mean, you've got obviously the Eagles at 6-0. We're going to spend most of our time on, but Philly's in the NLCS. You've got the Sixers starting tonight. It's good times to be a Philadelphia sports fan.
Yeah, like no one's like strangling each other. On the bad note, the Sixers do start tonight. If you know anything about Sixers Twitter,
but look, you get a game against Boston to kick things off, and Boston Celtics Twitter right now, it's not in a happy, fun place. Obviously, that's for the past couple of weeks. So hey, Sixers will probably get at least a dub to start things off. So you got that going for you.
Love it. All right, guys. Today we are breaking down Jalen Hurts, our grades, our top takeaways, and no better person to do it than Mark Schofield here. Let's jump right in. 0 to 10, 10 being perfect, 0 being trash. How would you grade Jalen Hurts' first 6 games of the 2022 season, man?
I kind of want to give it a 9. I mean, we'll say a hefty, robust 8. Let's do that. They're 6-0, so I think you kind of have to start there. And I know, look, quarterback wins are not a statistic; they're not a thing. But when you're the last unbeaten team and you're the quarterback of that last unbeaten team, I think you deserve some credit. You look at the way he's executed from the pocket, the strides that he's made, and honestly, Crocky, a lot of things that we've talked about over the past couple of shows, the things that you and I were looking for from Jalen Hurts, we're seeing them not just week to week, but more consistently over the course of this season. Reads, throws, decisions, had it in the pocket. Some of the stuff he did, particularly early in that game against Minnesota, I thought was some of the best football he's played in the NFL. And so I put it together. Are there areas he can improve? Yeah, we'll talk about some of those. I think he's been an 8, if not better.
Yeah, I fully agree. We're watching some highlights here quickly of Jalen Hurts. I'll continue as they go, but real quick, let's look at the first 6 games of last year versus the first 6 games of this year. You see the passing is up, the running's a little down, the interceptions are down, but wow, look at that completion percentage, man. 66.8% compared to 60.9%. Of course, the opposition, is a huge factor when you compare these first 6 games here. But wow, QB rating 98.4, huge leap from last year. QBR, huge leap from last year. His numbers in the pocket are significantly better. It's been really impressive, man. And he's made several throws, clutch throws. I mean, to be fair, a lot of that offense comes from the offensive line dominating, especially in the fourth quarters. We've just seen the Eagles have back-to-back games where fourth quarters, offensively, they have dominated a lot on the run game there. But, Jalen Hurts is getting it done. That throw he had to A.J. Brown and then to Devontae Smith against the Dallas Cowboys, the big time. The week before that, he had a big third down throw to Dallas Goedert, under pressure, guy right in his face. So in the pocket, he's been really, really good, man.
Yeah, and I think, Crocky, there's a number of different things you can sort of look at. There's so many statistics, and I don't like boiling quarterback play down to just say one statistic. I like to look at a couple of different ones in addition to sort of watching the film. But adjusted net yards per attempt, which I think is a very good metric of quarterback play. He's checking in right now, 7.34, fourth in the NFL behind Josh Allen, Tua, and Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. That's pretty good company. Obviously, another way to look at quarterbacks, EPA, expected points added per dropback, as well as completion percentage over expectation. Ben Baldwin from The Athletic has his website, RBSDM, runningbacksdon'tmatter.com, and you can pull it up, and he graphs it for you instantly with just a couple of clicks, and you want to be in that upper right quadrant, which means you're above league average in both metrics. He's well in that upper right quadrant, and he's clustered with a group of quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson, which I think if you would have told Eagles fans coming into the season. Hey, after week 6, headed into the bye week, you're going to be talking about Jalen Hurts is producing numbers on par with those guys. You would have said, absolutely, I'll take it. I'll run with it. Like, and that's where he is right now. And so the eye and film test, the metrics that you can sort of look at, he's played extremely, extremely good football to this point.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to our next question here. What are some notable areas of growth you have seen from Jalen Hurts through 6 games, man?
Yeah, I mean, first off is an area that we've talked about a lot, which is sticking and throwing from the pocket. And, when I wrote after the Detroit game that, hey, he's doing it, it's clicking, I got a lot of Eagles fans sort of push back on me, like, no, he ran it like, 9, 17, how many ever, 17 times or so for 90 yards. They're like, he's still running too much. I'm like, those moments when he had to run, he did, and I'm fine with that. But he's still sticking and climbing in the pocket. And you're seeing both examples from the past couple of weeks, examples from earlier in the season. My favorite play of his so far this year was that first 3rd and long against Minnesota early in that game, where he had another moment where it's like he's going to pull it down, and he just reset himself, hit that deep curl to A.J. Brown along the left hash mark up that seam. It's those kinds of moments where you're just like, yeah, he's sort of figured it out. It's all sort of come together. The decision-making, the reads, the process and speed, like all of that stuff is hugely improved from last year. And so I see that. I see how he's reading defenses. I see how he's reading rotations. That play we just saw against Detroit, that was a spun safety look where they went from 2 to 1 and he read it immediately and attacked downfield, which in today's NFL, that's what you need to be able to do. You have to be able to attack vertically when they decide we're going to play single high. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more why that's going to be important down the stretch, but I think that's been a huge area of growth.
Yep, I absolutely agree. He's been way more vocal at the line of scrimmage. There was a play against the Dallas Cowboys where he audibled and he made the right play. There's been just so many examples of that. And I also think the Eagles, Nick Sirianni and Steichen, like they're playing to his strengths a lot more. Here's a little more stats on his growth. The bad throw percentage is down. The on target percentage is up. This is an interesting stat. I want to kind of hear your thoughts because he's not being pressured as much compared to last year. 26.4% being pressured to 21.6. He's faced a lot of light boxes this year. Like coming into this season, like I'm a little shocked at that personally because under pressure, like he's done much better than this year compared to years past. But that's definitely something he still has to prove, at least when it comes to going up against a great defense that can get after it. There have been times when he kind of showed up, on the big stage, but for me, like that's a little bit of a surprise. But I look at that stat, 3rd down. His quarterback rating on 3rd down is massive. He was one of the worst quarterbacks on 3rd down last year. That has been a dramatic leap forward for Jalen Hurts this year. And then you look at 20-plus yard plays a game. This is a big play offense. Other than that one game, I forget who it was. Again, I think it was the Cardinals. There was just way too many screens, way too many short, quick passes in that game plan. This is an offense that has really opened up compared to years past. But the other shock I had was as a team, they're actually throwing less than they did last year, which was really shocking. Any take on those numbers?
I think the success rate on 3rd down, the quarterback rating on 3rd down certainly stands out. When I evaluate and study quarterbacks, both for the draft and just generally studying them, 3rd down, red zone, 4th quarter, like those are areas of focus. And to be able to have that kind of success on 3rd down is huge. It's why, when you can stay on the field on 3rd down, when you can get another set of downs, that's huge for an offense. And it's part of the reason I'm trying to pull it up right now, but they're so good, like on a drive-to-drive basis, on putting together points, putting points on the board. And that's a huge part of it, being able to sort of stay on the field. When you look at 3rd down conversion percentage, the Eagles are up there. They're 6th in the league right now. 43.7% of 3rd downs they convert, 6th in the league. That's a good place to be. Same thing with 4th down. 69% of the time they convert on 4th down, which is huge. And so That's very big for them. And here's a stat I was looking for. They average 2.42 points per drive, which might not seem like much, but that's fourth in the NFL right now. The Chiefs, the Bills, and interestingly enough, the Raiders are the only three teams better. But the Chiefs and the Bills are perhaps the two best offenses in the league, and they're up there with them. And that ability to finish drives with points, that third down, quarterback rating is a huge part of that.
Love it. Let's go on to our next question of the evening. And what is the kind of biggest concern you still have concerning Jalen Hurts at this point? Any kind of still question marks in your head?
Yeah, I mean, Crockett, the thing I'm curious about, there's a great Twitter account like The Honest NFL.
Oh, it's so good, man.
Anybody
so good
listening to this and watching this knows of that account, because there's a lot of Eagles stuff there. And that account was talking about, teams perhaps trying to get more pressure on Hurts in the second half of the season. And, we saw those pressure numbers down a bit, actually more than a bit from last year. And I think, what is I'm going to be watching in the second half of the season, A, do teams get more pressure on Hurts? And B, how does he respond? Because, PFF breaks out, pressure in the pocket, and his adjusted completion percentage this year when pressured in the pocket is 57.6. Now, adjusted completion percentage, it strips out drops, throwaways, and things like that. It basically gives the quarterback credit for drops. It says, if you put it where it's supposed to be and they drop it, well, that's a completed pass. But that 57.6 when pressured is 28th in the league among qualified passers. It's behind Garoppolo, Flacco, Baker Mayfield, Cooper Rush. I mean, it's barely ahead of Skylar Thompson. And so looking at those numbers, seeing, when you're watching the film, those moments, and it hasn't been a lot, but those moments when he's been pressured, makes me think that teams might try to dial up heat more as we get into the second half of the season. And then how does he respond when that happens?
Yep, I absolutely agree. I want to hear your response to this one because, as an Eagles fan, we kind of live in a bubble here. 6-0 at the bye week is absolutely surreal. But you kind of touched on it earlier, coming into this season, I think objectively, Jalen Hurts was in that top 15 area of quarterback play. I think it was basically 50-50, at least on my end, whether or not he would take that next step or whether or not he would become that franchise quarterback. You have a much more outside narrative perspective on these things, man. Has it changed? Where are we looking at when it comes to Jalen Hurts moving forward?
Oh, the outside perspective has certainly changed. I mean, and look, obviously, I was kind of straddling myself between both worlds. Before going over at SB Nation, I was co-hosting the Eagles quarterbacks podcast, at the same time while doing sort of national stuff. But I was more of a Hurts believer. Generally speaking, the consensus going into the year was Eagles might draft a quarterback. And you and I talked about that, before the season started. They might draft a quarterback. He's either going to figure it out and figure it out quickly, or they're going to go in a different direction. And that conventional wisdom, that bit of sort of that narrative has wildly shifted. It's to the point where people are looking at it now and hey man, they'd be drafted fifth if the draft happened right now. Imagine what you could add to this team, for Jalen Hurts. Who's your favorite wide receiver in the draft? You probably don't need a wide receiver, but who's your favorite left tackle or whatever you want to add to this team, or even the defensive side of the ball. Whoever your favorite player is, they can add it now, because there is no sort of, unless something crazy happens down the stretch in the second half of the season, I don't think there's any sort of belief or idea that they're going to go in a different direction now. Hurts has seized this job. He's made the strides that people are hoping to see from him. This is an offense that's kicking. This is a team that's undefeated. That conversation, that narrative has wildly shifted since, say, this summer.
Yeah, and going into this season, college football season, and we'll get to quarterback breakdowns in a little bit, and for 2023 NFL draft, because I love hearing this man's takes, because I love the NFL draft, and it's a really good, solid crop of quarterbacks that are coming in. But Will Anderson and Keely Ringo say what's up for that number 5 pick. That's where I'm at right now.
Exactly. I mean, if you can get Will Anderson to slide to you at 5, if the draft happens now, it's a run to the podium situation. Don't even think twice.
I would trade up. I would if you can get Will Anderson to kind of fill in Brandon Graham's shoes opposite Josh Sweat, man. Woo! That'd be just insane. Let's roll on this question because there has been some MVP chatter. Like, in your opinion, where does Jalen Hurts rank among MVP candidates? Is he there? He's in the top 5. Is he? Okay.
He's in the top 5 right now. I mean, I actually, in getting ready for the show, I looked at the odds, and I think I saw a piece where he's like the second favorite right now, like behind Allen. I think it's Allen, then Hurts, then like Mahomes, and on down the line. He's certainly in the conversation. If this team wins the division, say 14-2, whatever their record ends up being, and they win the division, I don't see how he doesn't at least get a bunch of votes, if not win the thing outright. Now, obviously, there's a lot of football left to be played, but yeah, he's one of the favorites right now in Vegas for a reason.
If here's a poll I ran yesterday. If the Eagles win like 15 to 16 wins, they're like 15-2 by season's end, number 1 seed in the NFC. Like, he's got to be there. Like, it's got to be right at the top.
Let's be honest. We know how this goes. Like, in terms of value to a team, you might be able to say, well, I don't know, maybe it's Darius Slay who's the most valuable Eagle right now, or maybe it's A.J. Brown and how the offense has sort of looked with him as part of the offense. Maybe it's Kelsey, who still remains fantastic. I mean, rewatching some stuff from Sunday and the way he's still moving at his age. But it's a quarterback award. Like, if you're the number 1 seed in your conference, if you win the division, if you go 14-3 or 15-2, and you're the quarterback of that team, you're probably winning MVP. And so if that's where they finish, he's certainly in the mix for the award.
Yeah, if there was anything I didn't expect, it's the NFC East. The top 3 teams of the NFC East being 15-3 heading into Week 7. That's nuts, man. There's no way. There's no way I expected that one. I Love Weed chimes in. He's a Cowboys fan. Get out of here. Get out of here. What's up, Quentin? All right. Next question. All right. So assuming Jalen Hurts continues to play at this pace, this is kind of the long-term question. What kind of contract extension should we expect for Jalen Hurts moving forward? Because we kind of weren't sure, at least this point last year, is this a quarterback you win because of? Is this a quarterback you win around? And so forth. Has that stance changed at all? Like, what's your thoughts with this contract?
I think in terms of the kind of quarterback he is, he's knocking on the door of that quarterback you win because of club. Like, I don't know if I put him there yet, but he's at the upper tier of that group of quarterbacks that you win games with, which is a very good place to be. You're talking about, again, quarterbacks like, 9 to 12 in the league. Like, whereas before the season, it was like he's probably in that 12 to 15, 16 range. Like, he's jumped up a little bit, which I think is a very good start to the year. And I think if you would have told Eagles fans before the season began, that's where he'd be by the bye week, they said, absolutely, sign me up. And who knows, he can continue to climb higher. And by some metrics and by some ways of looking at the quarterback position, he's already done that. He's already gotten beyond that. In terms of what the contract looks like, it's probably something in the Kyler range. I think it was Kyler, like 3 years, $230 million, 105 guaranteed or something like that. Worth up to 230 or something like that. I don't think you're talking like Allen, Mahomes. Certainly not a Deshaun Watson type of deal. I think Watson was an extreme outlier for a number of different reasons. But I think something in that Kyler range kind of makes sense to me.
Okay. All right. Last question before we get into the NFL draft. All right. The Eagles are at 6-0. Are they for real in your opinion? Are they the true number 1 seed in the NFC, number 1 team in the NFC? And who do you think is their biggest threat as they currently stand?
I think they're for real. I think they're the best team in the NFC right now. I look around, Minnesota at 5-1. I'm still not a believer in them. Like, I sat down yesterday with every intention of like watching Minnesota and writing a glowing piece about Kirk Cousins, and I couldn't find the angle because it's like, this is kind of underwhelming. They don't really impress me right now, and we saw what happened when those two teams played back in week 2. I mean, I don't see how you consider say, yeah, Minnesota is a true threat to the Eagles. Okay, what happened a couple of weeks ago when they played each other?
Mhm.
Dallas is obviously interesting. What they're going to look like when Dak comes back. But I still have questions about Dallas overall. Their defense is very good. I think that will help them. Then you look at the rest of the NFC, and that's the other thing that I really think helps Philadelphia right now is there aren't any teams I really trust. Like
Mhm.
I think all of those teams have question marks. And something that I love to do is, how many different ways can you win a game as a team? Can you win it if it's a shootout? Can you win it if it's a 17-14 rock fight? Can you win if you have to throw? Can you win if you can only run? Like Philadelphia right now has more pathways to winning games than I think other teams do. Like you look around the league, I don't trust Green Bay right now at all. I don't think they could win in a shootout, as odd as that seems to say, but that offense is struggling. There are struggles down in Tampa Bay, certainly struggles with the NFC West teams. And I think Philadelphia right now is a very balanced team that has multiple pathways to win games. And that's huge. So, yeah, I think they're legit. I think they're here to stay. Maybe Dallas is just still their biggest competition overall because you look around the NFC at large, I've got more questions than answers about every other team.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Things are too good right now. Too good. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect this.
Yeah.
Not at all. All right, let's roll on to the NFL draft. I want to get your takes real quick on ranking the top college quarterbacks at this time. We kind of did that on a previous show last year where he broke down guys C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young and Will Levis, especially Will Levis. I kind of want to hear your thoughts because he's kind of been up and down. But how would you rank the top quarterbacks for the 2023 NFL draft?
Yeah, for me, there's one new name in, say, the top four. I mean, the top two is the same. It's Stroud and Young, and I'm not really moving off of that. And I know Alabama just lost, but Young was a baller in that game. Still a huge fan of what he does at the position. I know the criticisms and all that, the size and everything, but I'm still a huge fan of his. Hooker's now at 3 for me.
Wow.
I've been very impressed by him. And I know what the debate is going to be. It's going to be the age thing because he's an older college quarterback. I mean, he's a graduate. And there are going to be people that say, look, you don't draft a quarterback that's that old. I think that's a bit of an outdated thing. And quarterbacks are playing longer generally when they are able to stick around and if they're good. So I think the end part of it, the end range, isn't a concern. And they're playing early. It's one thing if you drafted a quarterback 10 years ago who's 24, 25, with the idea that you might sit him for 2 or 3 years and then he doesn't start until he's 27. Now he's probably going to play right away, or as a rookie in all instances. And so the age thing, I think, is not as much of a factor as it used to be. And then Levis is 4. Levis is the guy that's going to be, you're going to hear stories like, oh, coaches say they want their, daughter to date him, and he's a film guy. And, you're hearing these glowing character type of reviews around him right now. I go by more than anything else since I don't get to sit down with these guys, absent some rare circumstances, what I see on film, and it's been up and down. I think, there's almost no better duplicate than beating a Nick Saban defense, maybe a Kirby Smart defense, but beating those types of defenses with the looks that they give you, because what they're doing, the cover 7 split coverages that Saban runs, that's where the NFL is going with all this discussion about too high and quarters and all of that. That's all Sabanese. Kirby Smart runs similar stuff. And if, Hooker squares off with Georgia and has a similar type of game, it's going to be hard to look me in the eye and say, I'm drafting somebody else over, Hendon Hooker. Now, if it's Stroud or if it's Young, I might get it. But if it's one of the other guys, I'd push back on that and say, look, there's no better test for a college quarterback as to what they could be in the NFL than staring across the field at one of those types of defenses. He solved one. I'm very curious to see if he can solve another.
Love it. All right, Hendon Hooker over Will Levis. I agree. Will Levis, every game it seems like he makes that like 1 or 2 throws that are like, wow, that was.
I've seen the Carson Wentz comps already.
Interesting. Okay.
And I can kind of get it. There's a bit of a roller coaster factor there. Now, look, there's a lot of football left to be played. I get it, but right now that's where I've got those guys.
All right. Another guy that's been kind of up and down, especially up then down. Is Anthony Richardson. And the guy came out like gangbusters. He looked like the next Cam Newton. He was incredible with his arm. with his legs. But what's your take on Anthony Richardson, because he's struggled, right?
Yeah, it's been up and down. And thinking about this show earlier today and thinking about where Richardson is, rewatching some of it, I get a Malik Willis vibe in a sense. Very athletic, but there's a lot of growth that needs to happen. Now, look, I had Willis in last year's draft as QB1. So to then say that, like, to turn around a year later and say, oh, this guy, Anthony Richardson, reminds me of Willis, but I'm a little bit unsure of him. Yeah, that seems a little bit off. But it was a different quarterback class. I think in this group, Richardson had some work to do if he wants to get towards the top of the draft board. And then, there's certainly talent. You saw the run against LSU Saturday night. Like, there's certainly talent with Anthony Richardson. He has the arm talent and all of that stuff. It's just playing more consistent, avoiding mistakes. Like, those are things that he has to sort of clean up. If the season ended right now and I was advising him, I'd say you might want to stick around another year. I don't know if you want to rush out right now, particularly in this draft class. Like, maybe give it a year, although we're probably going to talk about a guy in a second that you don't want to be in the same draft class with.
Yeah. So Anthony Richardson, I could see it both ways. I don't know. Like, Malik Willis is a great comparison, because I think regardless of whatever program he gets drafted to, whether it's this year or next year, like, he's gonna get that Malik Willis treatment. Like, you're gonna have to take time and coach him up and things like that. But like the reward potential for a guy like that is outstanding.
Yeah, which is part of the reason why, particularly in last year's draft class, we had people talking up Malik Willis. It's like, look, if you're skeptical about this class anyway, why not take a big swing on the upside? Willis still fell to the third round, even in that draft class, which I still thought was surprising. But, Tennessee might be in a situation where, they had Ryan Tannehill. They've got room and time, and they can take their time with him and be patient with him. It might end up being the perfect landing spot for Malik Willis. And, if Richardson does come out, maybe something similar happens. He goes to a team like maybe like an Indianapolis that maybe has another year with Matt Ryan, but the window is closing and they've got a chance to sort of develop somebody.
All right. And then we get to another guy. It's the exact opposite. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this guy, because coming into this, he wasn't really on my radar for some reason. I don't know how I missed him. But he's by far the biggest climber for me this year. I'm blown away every single week by this dude. Caleb Williams out of USC. The way he just improvises, avoids pressure, makes big-time throws with his arm again and again. What's your take on Caleb Williams? And is he the lock number one pick in 2 years for the 2024 draft?
I mean, lock, I don't want to go there. Okay. Obviously, we've got a long ways to go, but does he look like he could be? Yeah, absolutely. He's dynamic, and he's someone that's been on my radar for years now because he's a kid local to the D.C. area. So
cool.
The whole process of him getting recruited out to play at Oklahoma and eventually taking the job from Spencer Rattler and then now going to USC. Like, he's somebody that I've been watching for a while now. Dynamic, like explosive, just an absolute offensive weapon at the quarterback position. Some of the plays he made against Utah this past week in a loss were just, sharing them around in group chats or in the SB Nation Slack. Like, this guy's different. And I don't see any sign of that changing. His third year in a Lincoln Riley offense next year, I can only imagine the kind of production he's going to put up, the kind of plays that he's going to make. So sitting here right now, yeah, he looks like he's going to be the first overall pick in next year, the 2023 draft. I guess 2024 draft at that point. But, things can change. We thought that about some other quarterbacks down the road. I mean, I've written pieces about what the way too early mock drafts sometimes look like and how, who we thought was going to be QB1 changes. Yep. Spencer Rattler was that guy.
Exactly.
Right? Like, the guy that Caleb's job he took. I mean, so things can change. But right now, yeah, he looks like he's built different.
Tanner McKee, where does he go? Like, that was another guy I was like pretty interested in, and he's kind of fallen off a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think a product of what's happening with Stanford right now. I mean, he's 5 interceptions. That's not what we thought. He threw just 7 of all last year. Stanford sputtering a little bit. QBR of like 58.9. Now he'll get the David Shaw's offense is like pro ready. It's going to get ready to play quarterback. But that can only get you so far. I mean, you look at what the game requires at the quarterback position now, like lining up under center and taking a nice drop with your fluid footwork. That's only part of the game now. It used to be most of it. You got to be able to create. The game is trending towards the Caleb Williamses of the world and away from the Tanner McKee type of quarterbacks.
I agree.
That's probably not helpful for Tanner McKee.
Yeah, I could just like see Caleb Williams just plug and play in the NFL. Just get rid of the ball fast and just move the ball downfield. He's just built for the NFL. This is a really fun question because like Texas is suddenly becoming must-watch TV every Saturday. How good is Quinn Ewers in your opinion, and what does that mean for the following year? I believe when Arch Manning comes to Texas, what are they going to do there?
I mean, I imagine Texas is sitting there right now thinking we're just going to have 1 year of overlap between the two because Quinn's already shown that like he'll be able to leave after next year. He'll be able to enter, and then Arch will have like the 1 year of sort of sitting and watching and learning Sarkisian's offense, and then he'll take over after that. That's how I imagine it will play out. That's what I've had people tell me in the college world. Like, yeah, he's going to be leaving before you know it because he'll be ready. Like he looks already. Like JT O'Sullivan, the QB School on Twitter, did a great video recently on Quinn, showing some of the absurd throws that he can make, the off-platform stuff that he can do. 1 more year in the offense after next year, I think he'd probably be in a position to leave. I guess the question would become, if the growth that we think will happen next year, through the rest of this year and into next year doesn't happen, and he maybe takes a step back and he decides, look, I'm not ready, and he sticks for 1 more year, and now you've got Arch Manning waiting for 2 years.
Yeah.
They can always redshirt Arch, buy an extra year or things like that. But in this transfer market world we're living in, would he want to do that? Or would he just say, look, I'm ready to play. I can go play somewhere else right now. LSU needs a quarterback.
Yeah.
That's going to be the interesting thing. But I think the path that Quinn's on right now makes it where it'll be like 1 year where Arch gets to sort of learn what it's like to be a college kid and then takes over.
Love it, man. All right, that basically wraps up our show tonight, man. Plugs, final thoughts on the Eagles. Where can we find you, man?
Well, look, the Eagles look great right now. Could that change? Maybe there is a lot of football left, but hard to argue with 6-0. And I think Hurts looks every bit the part, and I'm excited to see it. On Twitter, at Mark Schofield, SB Nation, SBNation.com. Get to do a lot of different stuff. It's not just all football. I've been writing about baseball, Formula One, wrote some hockey stuff.
Nice.
We've written about different sports as the football season winds down. But you can catch all the stuff over there at SB Nation. Mark Schofield on Twitter. Crocky, always love it, buddy.
Thank you so much for joining. Mark Schofield, at Mark Schofield on Twitter. The best of the best when he breaks it down. Everything NFL to Formula One. I didn't even know that. That's amazing. All right.
I'm a man of many interests. What can I say?
Love it. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Please be sure to smash that like, subscribe button. For Mark, for myself, stay awesome, everyone.